Nicolás Maduro and Cilia Flores, were flown out of Caracas and processed at MDC Brooklyn. U.S. officials call it law enforcement. Caracas calls it a kidnapping. Both can't be true. Stay with this breakdown as we reveal the operational timeline, Delta Force at the tip, the USS Iwo Jima linked transit, and the DOJ's strategy to see which narrative the facts actually support. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. A sealed plan sat for years on a prosecutor's desk. So why did the knock on Maduro's door happen now? Start with paper. In 2020, federal prosecutors in the Southern District of New York laid out narco-terrorism and cocaine importation conspiracy charges, plus weapons counts tied to machine guns and destructive devices. That filing sketched a long-running network and set names in ink. After the capture, a superseding indictment snapped into place. It synchronized the allegations, clarified roles, and connected overt acts to a custody reality. The legal grid now matched the bodies in handcuffs, which matters when every later step, venue, evidence, detention, hinges on a clean chain. Paper doesn't open doors in Caracas. The target lives behind concentric rings of guards, overlapping patrols, and watchers paid to notice small changes. The city's tight streets funnel vehicles into choke points. Cameras feed counterintelligence teams who track unusual traffic and foreign accents. Radios crossload between palace security and internal services. Warrants stall at the first metal gate unless someone creates a gap. The core problem was simple. An arrest order existed. The path to the person did not. That is where the stack comes in. DOJ and SDNY supplied authority and constraints, building the arrestable case and the elements to defend it. The FBI and DEA focused on placement and access, where the principal sleeps, where vehicles refuel, who carries the secondary phone, which elevator is on a separate breaker. The Department of Defense provided the only piece that works on a clock, a force that can move at night, hold a hallway for minutes, and exit clean. Each lane had a separate boss, but a shared map. The legal frame shaped every move. Operators trained to clear rooms shifted to arrest standards. Positive identification before contact, lethal force only under imminent threat, evidence preservation, and immediate medical checks. No rolling firefight, no broad suppression fires. The point was custody, not battle damage. That distinction mattered beyond tactics. Label it an arrest, and you argue a criminal process with an indicted fugitive. Label it an assault, and you invite debates on intervention. Words defined rules of engagement and the posture on the radio. Timing hinged on a thin crack in a heavy door. Signals intelligence flagged an unusual maintenance cycle on palace comms and elevator control. Human sources reported a security rotation compressed for a private family event, reducing overlap between inner and outer rings. The window was real but narrow. Approval followed, aircraft staged, and a launch order went out when those two lines matched. Technical blinders and human fatigue at the same hour. At the breach, speed beat mass. Delta Force elements executed a limited duration entry. One grab team moved on the principal, a second on the spouse, because separation prevents leverage and delays bargaining. Operators carried flex cuffs, cameras for evidence logging, and medical kits for on-site clearance. As soon as identities were confirmed, custody passed to federal agents embedded in the package. The military piece began to wind down before wheels were even up. This wasn't written from scratch. Prior high-value apprehensions taught short objective times, deconfliction cells that sit above the noise to prevent blue-on-blue or diplomatic collisions, and a comms blackout until the aircraft cleared the last expected intercept arc. Keep radios disciplined. Keep timelines short. Don't broadcast success until failure is off the table. In the end, the indictment drove the raid like a warrant. It narrowed the target set, dictated evidence capture, and anchored the post-contact handoff. Operators did not need to seize a building. They needed to satisfy a judge. With wrists zip-tied and custody established, the next problem loomed: how to move a sitting president across borders without a war. If this was a military snatch, why did the chain of custody lead to a Brooklyn detention center and not a brig? The exit map looked like a relay. The lift from Caracas ran by air to a Navy deck. then back to air for the long leg north. A helicopter hop put the detainees on a platform like the USS Iwo Jima, a ship large enough to host aircraft, medical teams, and secure compartments. On deck, crews kept rotors turning for quick turnaround, while planners aligned the next flight. The follow-on moved to Stewart Air National Guard Base, outside the New York Metro sprawl, where federal transport could roll without fanfare to the city. Each leg answered a risk: exposure over land, interception risk near the coast, and media heat near commercial hubs. The goal was to keep custody intact, and the route flexible until the last handoff. The path ran through a geopolitical minefield. Moscow and Tehran warned of violations and aggression. Beijing called for immediate release and talks. The UN sounded alarm about precedent and urged respect for international law. European capitals urged caution. At home, the clash grew. Some lawmakers said this was an illegal war without Congress. Others said it mirrored past fugitive arrests and needed no new authorization. The debate centered on where law enforcement stops and a use of force begins, and whether indictments can reach a sitting head of state in practice. On the ship, the choreography looked like a checklist. A custody officer read out names, dates, and docket numbers while cameras rolled. Federal agents logged the transfer with timestamps and badge IDs. If counsel was requested or present, that note entered the record. Miranda protocols applied based on the location and stage of questioning. Statements during transport required clear advisals and waivers. Agents cataloged items taken at the point of arrest, phones, watches, documents, and sealed them with evidence numbers. Medical staff performed quick checks, noting injuries and vitals to avoid later claims of abuse. Officials kept saying this was law enforcement for a reason. That label keeps the action in the lane of arrest and extradition rather than intervention. It frames the targets as indicted fugitives and points to a court with a judge, a docket, and rules. Under that frame, military units support a Justice Department mission. The words shift which treaties and conventions come into play and close doors to claims that a war act occurred. That is why the paperwork moved in step with the aircraft. Naval assets made sense under that narrative. A large deck ship projects a protective air bubble with escorts and radar. It has trauma suites if something goes wrong. It offers secure communications that can hold encrypted calls between agencies without burning sources. And at sea, routing can adjust to threats without crossing borders. While the custody story still holds, detainees in federal hands, transiting under lawful authority. At MDC Brooklyn, processing starts at the Sally Port. Officers confirm the defendant's identity against the indictment and capture form. A health screen checks for acute issues and flags any special medical needs. High-risk detainees move to segregation units, away from general population, for protection and control. Housing reviews consider gang presence and prior conflicts. Property logs and legal mail procedures get explained, even if counsel is already tracking. The clock then points to SDNY, where the initial appearance, rule-based and short, sets counsel, detention, and next dates.
Narrative split in two. Caracas declared an illegal kidnapping and imposed emergency measures. The Department of Justice said it was a lawful arrest on standing charges. Both carried their evidence to the court of public opinion, while the actual court weighed jurisdiction and procedure.